So are people just like coming in off the street and like saying, Todd, help me be, bigger, faster, stronger? Or like, I mean, what's the purpose of the lab, I guess? Or is it like more research?
So the purpose of the lab is to improve athletes' performance. We
Okay.
haven't started doing any research yet. That's something that we want to get into, but right now it's just about building the lab and increasing, the numbers and really just partnering with local teams, local high schools, colleges, professional teams like the Grand Rapids Drive, the basketball team, the minor league basketball team for the Pistons, or the West
Hmm.
Michigan Whitecaps. We're working on setting things up with them so that, because like I said, nothing like our lab exists anywhere in Michigan or even the Midwest. And another thing
Right.
that makes our lab really unique is that not only do we have all these performance testing, but I'm housed within the sports rehabilitation department. So we also have physical therapists who are here, and we have like a lot of rehab equipment. We've got an Alter G treadmill where you can put somebody on the treadmill who maybe got injured and is just getting back into running but can't do full weight bearing. So
Hmm.
the Alter G is essentially unweighting their body to, if you weighed 100 pounds, it could unweight your body to so that you only weighed 20 pounds. So it's really cool as a use for rehab or even just runners who want to increase their mileage without putting all of that extra strain on the body.
Hmm.
So we've got the performance lab, we've got physical therapy, and we also employ a sports psychologist. And so he does mental training skills with athletes. So we've got all of this kind of under one roof, and it's a really well integrated machine where it's like, go do this one, and this one, and all of their needs are met under one roof. And so not only is the lab state of the art and not found anywhere else, but so is like all of the services that we offer.
Hmm. So how often are you testing yourself with all the like the toys you have to try to improve your own times?
Well, no, I'm not testing myself. I'm just checking the equipment to
You
make
are
sure that it
calibrating the
works
equipment,
exactly.
right?
I'm calibrating the equipment. Honestly, like I don't test myself that much. I haven't got on to do a VO2 max test yet, but I want to
Hmm.
do that. I've done the DEXA a couple of times, but not much. The sweat composition test I've done, but with that, you only need to do it once because your sweat composition doesn't really change much throughout your career as an athlete.
Right.
It's always going to be like it might change, fluctuate 100, 200 milligrams per liter, but not appreciably enough to really change like the hydration plan that we would prescribe you.
Right.
So I've done that one, but yeah, anything with the VO2 max test or anything, I haven't done that. I did a resting metabolic rate test on myself just to make sure that the equipment worked okay before I got somebody in.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and that's part of the reason that I wanted to start this lab is because I know as an athlete, I would want these services. And
Hmm.
so to be able to offer it to other athletes who are looking for this, I mean, it's a scientifically proven way to improve your performance as opposed to just guessing. And that's the biggest thing is that a lot of us are like, okay, well, maybe I should take in about 150 milligrams of sodium per liter or whatever it is. Like maybe I should run my easy runs at this pace. Well, now we can scientifically say, okay, your sweat sodium concentration is 900 milligrams per liter. So you need to take in this much, this often. Or like your heart rate running at 7 minutes per mile is 140. So that's going to be your limit on, your aerobic runs, for
Hmm.
example. So it's really cool because it's a scientifically proven way to improve performance.
Do you find that a lot of the things, because I know we both have kind of a feeling or experience um, in terms of like, okay, I know my long run pace is this and my heart rate is roughly going to be here. Do you find a lot of those things get corroborated, or have you had any kind of like surprises in the few tests that you've done with yourself?
I think the biggest thing, and not tests that I've done on myself, but tests that I've done on clients in the lab, is that a lot of people do their easy runs too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that Matt
I have a whole
Fitzgerald
video about
talked
that.
about this, so I won't get too much into it. But the problem if you do your easy runs too hard is that you can't do your hard runs hard enough. And the goal of an easy run is not to improve fitness, but it's to help recover from a hard run and to prepare you for the next hard run. Improving blood flow to the exercised muscles. It's not to gain fitness. And so, Eliud Kipchoge can run 4:34 per mile for a marathon, but he does like his warm up at 8-minute pace. Like the rest of us should probably be running a little bit slower.
A little bit slower. Yeah, I always, I always noticed that too. Just this is anecdotal, obviously, but in college you go to the track meet and often indoors when you would see people more often because you're all cooped up in this little area, but you'd see the guys you knew. Okay, these are the 3, 5 guys that are going to be out front for this 5K or 2 mile or whatever the event was, and they would be essentially doing the football shuffle to warm up, and you're like, what is happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
But it, like, almost without exception, the fastest guys would end up almost going the slowest on their warm ups compared to the rest of us.
You have to run slow to run fast. That's one of the lines that I like to use in the lab, and people are like, that doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah,
And
it's
I'm
a little
just like,
counterintuitive.
trust me.
Right, because you want to go hard all the time. You're like, and I've battled with this with my father for years. He just wants to go as hard as he can every single day, and I'm like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's that sense
interesting.
of you want to go hard because you're like you feel like you're getting something accomplished when you're going hard. I think that's
Right.
the
Yeah.
mentality there.
And I know that Matt has the whole thing on the 80-20 rule, but it's
Right.
interesting because I just had a client in the lab today and we did a VO2 max test and I was discussing with them about 80% of your runs should be really easy. And so I pulled up my training peaks to see kind of what my ratio was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have my training split into 7 zones, and zones 1 and 2 I spend 81% of my time in zones 1 and 2. And I was like, hey, that's about perfect. And so zones 1 and 2, so I just ran a half marathon last weekend and I averaged 5:13 pace per mile.
Mm-hmm.
But my zone 1, which I spend 63% of the time in, is 7-minute pace or slower. So it's
Mm-hmm.
essentially 2 minutes per mile slower than my race pace.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't run their easy runs that easy. Let's say your half marathon pace is a 7:30 mile, and for your easy runs you're running 8-minute pace. Like that's not slow enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one of the biggest things that I think has been the takeaways that I've conveyed to clients that come in the lab is that whether it's swimming, biking, running, whatever, you need to do your easy workouts actually easy.
Yeah, and I know since the last time we talked to you, I think you had mentioned 7, 8 minute pace for your long runs. We also talked about cadence, and
Mm,
that's definitely been in my head, since I don't know what that was. I think that was January because we were talking about our birthdays at the time.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that's definitely been in my head this year, and I can't say that I've slowed down quite as much as you do, even though I'm still like I probably should. But I'm really big on RPE, so like I just let that take care of itself. Where it's like I make sure I feel I'm going easy, and then if I see my clock and I'm just like 7 minute pace today, I'm like it's okay. Todd said it's fine. Like just just let it be.
Don't blame
I
me.
no. I'm just saying like it's like a valve in my head where just like everybody else, I have that the inclination where I want to go faster, but it's like it's not really serving to help me out to do that.
Right.
So it's like I typically have a limiter about 6:45, and that's like RPE feels easy, and I just happen to be going quickly. But I've been leaning more towards the 7 minute pace this year, which although has been a little tough for me because I'm like, am I just getting slow and old, or am I like actually getting
It's
smarter? I don't know which which is
just slow and
happening.
old, man. We're just getting slow and old, both of us.
I'm trying to like stave that off as much as possible. Um, I can't remember if it was Matt. I feel like it may have been Matt. I don't know. I had talked to somebody and they're like, my fastest running days are behind me, and what am I gonna do now? And I was like, well, you gotta figure something out, some kind of challenge. Um, you made me think about you mentioned the treadmill goes up to 23% gradient, and here on Friday I'm flying out to Colorado Springs to do the incline. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
Um,
Good luck.
Originally, I was going to run the incline because I wanted to get a baseline, but unfortunately, this week, Colorado Springs got a dumping of snow, and I've been watching the incline cam, and it is still covered in snow. So I will only be walking up it for this trip. It's a little disappointing, but I'm in Kansas City. Like a steep hill here is like 10% gradient. The incline, average is 43. So I think at some points it pitches up to mid 60s, something like that. So you mentioned the treadmill, and I'm like, I have to get one of those and stick it up on some cinder blocks or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're lucky you even have 10% in Grand Rapids here. I think the biggest hills that we have are the highway overpasses.
hmm
Like I did hills yesterday morning, and that's where I did my hill runs was on a highway overpass.
I think you're like asking to get hurt. Speaking of your training, though, you mentioned you did a half marathon last weekend, and before we got going, you mentioned you set a new PR. So tell me about that. What happened there? Why are you doing half marathon? Because I mean, we do triathlon, so why are you even racing? It's off season. What are you doing?
I know, right? It was just kind of a fun end of the year thing. My run fitness has been really good this year. I haven't really had very good tries, just stupid mistakes by myself or things out of my control. And, I didn't win any national championships this year or any world championships this year. And it was kind of a disappointing year because
Mhm.
last year I literally won every national and world championship that I entered. So, but like my fitness is there. And so I was like, I haven't been able to show my fitness. And
Right.
so I wanted to do it at the end of the year for fun, and I was doing it with a friend, and so we'd been training together all summer, and really just I wanted to go and see what I could do, and my goal was to run a 110, and just to see if I could do it,
hmm
and I went through the first 9 miles right on pace it was like 5:19 pace.
hmm
Uh, and that's right at, finishing at 110. And I was still about 40 seconds down from the leader at this point. And I had thought that he was going to come back further because last year he won the race with a 1:15. And I
hmm
was like, there's no way he can hold this pace. He's got to come back. And nine
hmm
miles into the race, and he still hadn't come back to me. And so I was like, well, I guess I got to start running pretty hard now. So the last 4 miles, I averaged 5-minute pace. And in the course of the race, I set a new half marathon PR. I went 108. I set a 10K PR, and I set a 5K PR. My last 5K I ran in 15:30, which is a 5K PR for me. And I ended up catching the guy with
Was it
about
downhill at all? Can I like feel better about
no,
myself?
no downhills. And I caught him with about a mile to go, and ended up beating him by about 15 seconds. But I mean, we both had really great races. That was a big PR for him too. So, but I think part of the reason that we both ran so fast, I was wearing the Nike Next Percents and he was wearing the Vaporfly 4%.
hmm
So honestly, like I had no business running a 108, and running a 5K PR in the last 5K of a half marathon, like that doesn't happen. So
Not
those shoes,
generally speaking.
that was the first time that I worn those shoes in a race, and like it just felt easy. And so, I know there's a lot of talk with the shoes and Kipchoge's record, and
The
whether they should
unofficial
be banned
record,
or
yeah.
not. But I'm gonna keep wearing them until they're banned, because if you're not wearing them, honestly, you're missing out. It's a 4% improvement in economy, but that doesn't lead to a 4% improvement in time.
hmm
It's probably closer to like a 1 to 2%. I think the studies have shown,
hmm
but it makes your stride length so much longer because you just get that elastic recoil from that carbon plate where the shoe doesn't bend unless you put a lot of force under it. But then when you put that force on it, it springs back into place, and it just allows you to cover a lot more ground with each step.
Okay.
And so, your cadence can stay the same, but your stride length increases by, even if it's a couple of centimeters, you're
Right.
going to end up running quite a bit faster.
Right. You're getting more energetic return. It's not going into the ground. It's going back into you.
Exactly. And so it's really kind of fits right along with, for my dissertation at Michigan State, I looked at the performance related variables that are associated with faster finish times in triathlon. I know
Hmm.
that's a mouthful, but essentially what I did was I looked at Garmin watch data and looked at stride length, cadence,
Hmm.
vertical oscillation. I did that for the run. I did it for the bike, and I did it for the swim. Obviously, I didn't look at stride length on the bike or swim, but other
Right.
variables that the watch measures. And stride length was actually the most important variable in determining not just run performance, but it was the most closely associated with overall triathlon performance. Was the
Mm.
longer your stride length, the faster you're going to go. And the R value, so for those that aren't familiar, an R value closer to either 1 or -1, that would be a perfect linear relationship. So it'd either be, positive or negative. So the R value for stride length was the highest of all of them, and it was like a 0.93.
Hmm.
Whereas cadence, where everybody thinks this mythical 180 steps per minute, we saw that, yes, higher cadences tended to be faster, but the R value was not anywhere near that 0.9 that the stride length was. So,
Hmm.
my recommendation for people is not to increase your stride length or stride cadence, but to try to increase your stride length. Now, that does not mean to overstride,
Right. And
because
that's the next part I was going to ask.
you still want your feet to land underneath your body. So you don't want to be
Hmm.
reaching out in front of you. You want your feet landing underneath you, but essentially what you should think about when you're running is it's a backwards movement. So
Right.
you're pushing off behind you. You're not reaching out in front of you. So
Right.
the more that you can push off behind you using your glutes, your hamstrings to push off behind you, the more ground that you're going to cover. And you shouldn't be reaching out in front of you. You want your feet to land underneath your body. It reduces the injury risk. And what happens when you reach your feet out in front of your body is you're actually braking yourself.
Right.
So if you've got your legs here and you're reaching out here, you're basically slowing yourself down because your momentum's going this way. And if you are stepping, you're essentially slowing yourself down and then having to regenerate that speed all over again. Whereas if you
Hmm.
land underneath your body, you're essentially just falling forward. So having a big, long stride length is important, but you don't want to reach for it in the front. You want to reach for it in the back.
Right. Anybody watching on YouTube, I actually, if you go on the channel, I actually have a video of me running, which I slowed down in slow-mo, and you can kind of see the under body plant and all that kind of stuff going on. It makes me think about back in, I think it's episode 15 of the Smart Athlete podcast with Ben Yoakum. He's a coach at Coastal Carolina University, and he studied for his master's thesis. He studied like the run mechanics of like great sprinters like Carl Lewis and people like that. And he was talking about um, not extending your leg too far back behind you because it creates this extra essentially overcompensation, which typically ends up with you throwing your leg too far in front of you. When we're talking about stride length, are we talking about a little bit in terms of like air time, I guess I'll say. Like with the when the watch measures that, you know, I guess I'm having a hard time conceptualizing how the watch would measure, how far back um your legs going, but I can see how it would measure air time since it's measuring vertical oscillation. It's basically time distance between the bottom points of the vertical oscillation, when you touch the ground. So I'm trying to figure out what the data is actually saying.
So the way it actually measures stride length is it can measure cadence because you're just swinging your arm
Right,
forward and backward
right.
like this, and also distance. Like the GPS
Right.
measures distance. So it calculates stride length based on distance and cadence. So because cadence times length equals distance, well, we've got distance and cadence, so we can easily reverse the equation and solve for length.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really have anything to do with that vertical oscillation.
Okay.
And vertical oscillation can only be measured if the person is wearing a heart rate monitor, at
Okay.
least with the Garmin watch, because it takes into account, I don't know exactly how it does it, but with the how much vertical oscillation you're getting from that heart rate monitor in relation to the watch, I believe. So yeah, the way it actually measures stride length is just the GPS tracks how far you're going. The cadence is being measured when you're doing your arm swing,
Mm-hmm.
and it reverses the equation and solves for stride length.